show. I'm going to unpack the entrepreneurial journey for you. Making decisions, it creates action. Hey everybody, I want to thank you for joining me again on this week's episode of the House of Bricks podcast. If you've been following us for a while, we've had some incredible guests on our show with amazing stories, challenges that they've overcome in life. But one thing I want to tell you is the situations that you're going through right now in your business, in your personal life, those situations are real to you. So maybe you haven't won a Super Bowl, maybe you didn't grow up homeless, but whatever situation you're going through, the things that we talk about on this show, they're very applicable to where you are in life. I don't want you to get discouraged on the journey because you never know what one closed door may lead to in terms of another door being open. So stay committed to following our show. If you haven't watched our other episodes, I want you to go back and watch them because they're truly inspiring. I'm getting text messages almost every day, and they're continuing to build of people being impacted, lives being changed, businesses being changed. And that's what the House of Bricks is all about. Today's episode, it's a little different style. I'm not in the studio, but some of the people that have reached out to me wanted to get more information specific to their business and how they ensure they have a strong foundation and their position for growth, because foundations are not very exciting to build. They take a long time. It's a very laborious and mundane process, but the stronger your foundation, the better your position to withstand whatever vision, dream, and goals that you're trying to accomplish. As you know, my background, been an entrepreneur for 25 years. I've been in the business game for decades. I've watched businesses succeed. I've watched businesses fail. And I want to unpack for you the entrepreneurial journey that we're all on in life. And when I say entrepreneur, it doesn't mean that you just started a business. You don't even have to have your own business, but you can still have an entrepreneurial mindset. In order to unpack this for you, I've got a couple questions that you have to ask yourself. And more importantly, you'll be ready to listen to the answers and then take action. I'm sure you've heard the quote, where there's no vision, the people will perish. And that will happen in your own life as well. So you have to ask yourself, where do I want to go? I'm the architect. I'm building my house, my story. Where do I want to end up? And then paint a very clear picture where you want to be. And I typically will work backwards and figure out how to get there. So if I'm trying to build a business that has an enterprise value, 50, 100 million, I'll write that on a whiteboard and then work backwards from that $100 million goal and figure out very clearly what it's going to take to get there. How much capital am I going to need? How big does my sales team have to be? What is the marketing strategy? What's my go-to-market strategy? The three pivotal questions that I want to ask you today, and you have to ask yourself, is where do I want to go? How am I going to get there? And most importantly, am I up for the task at hand? Do I have the risk tolerance for it? Those are the three questions we're going to talk about today. When we talk about where you want to go, it comes down to a decision that only you can answer. Are you building a solopreneur type business, a lifestyle business that gives you flexibility with your time? You get to spend more time with your kids. You can play golf. You can vacation. Great business model, but you may have different aspirations in mind. You may want to transition from a solopreneur to an entrepreneur, start hiring team members. You start scaling the business. And then the next step in that process is the transition to a CEO. Again, there isn't a right answer, but you have to know what your long-term goals are. Now that you've decided where you want to go, you have to decide how are you going to get there. And a lot of entrepreneurs or people starting a business or even writing a business plan for an enterprise company, it's great to have a plan, but I call it analysis paralysis, where people are spending too much time on how they're going to get there. You have to get to market. You have to get an MVP product, and the best source of information on how you need to scale and improve your product. It doesn't come from sitting in a boardroom and making PowerPoint slides. That feedback actually comes from the customer. One of the tools I've always used is getting a minimum viable product to market, get the feedback from the clients, and get their buy-in on the improvements and features that you want to make. The last piece I want to talk about, and probably the most difficult question for you to answer, is, can I actually do this? And before you answer that question, I want to remind you that your feelings are not facts. So you have to be in a good place personally, a good place in your relationships. Then you decide, am I actually able to do what I want to do? Do I have enough capital? Do I need to raise capital? Have I put the right team in place? And then you, as the leader, as the entrepreneur, you have to make the commitment that says, yes, I'm able to do this, because that is what is going to prevent you from quitting when you want to quit. Having started 5 businesses, I've learned to understand the importance of understanding which season I'm in. And I communicate that to my wife, like, hey, we're in a harvest season. I don't have to work as much. We're reaping the rewards of the seeds we planted earlier. I may be in a building season, which means less time for the family, more time at work. And when you're gaining in one area, there has to be a loss in another. So if I'm focusing on my business and building my business, then I don't have as much time for my family. If I'm spending all my time with my family, then I'm not focused on growing my business. There isn't a right answer, but it's understanding where you are, what season you're in, and what tools you're going to need to be successful. The second is establishing that cornerstone. What are my personal goals? What do I want for the business? And how do they fit together? So crafting a legacy and thinking generationally, it requires sacrifice now for rewards later on. The third piece, again, is the compass. Where am I going? How am I going to get there? And what directions do I need to follow to make that happen? And that comes through proper planning. But once you have the plan, execute on it, continue to refine it, and that's what's going to help you achieve your goals. Here's what I want you to remember. You need to lay the proper groundwork. Am I in a good spot personally? Is my family aware of the sacrifice that it's going to take to build this business? Wherever there's gain in one area, you're going to sacrifice a loss in another. And there isn't a right answer to how much time am I going to spend in my business? How much time do I need to spend with my family? But you have to understand the give and take that's involved in that decision-making process. Sustainability and execution. These are the dual engines that are going to drive the success of your business. Determining, are you a first market mover? Do you have a competitive advantage? Do you have patents? What is the sustainability of the business? And then with that sustainability, being able to execute, these 2 engines are going to be what drives your business forward. As we wrap up our time together today, I'm going to leave you with one other thing, and that is the mastery of execution. You can have the best business plan in the world. You could spend years writing it, developing, getting insight from other people, coaches, advisors, other business leaders. But the best strategy in the world is absolutely worthless without the ability to execute. The piece of advice that I want to leave you with is execution comes down to the ability to make decisions. And pay attention to what I'm saying. It's not the ability to make the right decision. Of course, if you made the right decision all the time, and if I knew how to make the right decision all the time, I wouldn't be spending my time doing podcasts. But making decisions, it creates action. And that action will create feedback for your business, for you as the entrepreneur, as the leader. And again, when I use the word entrepreneur, It's an entrepreneurial mindset. Even if you're at a Fortune 500 company, even if you're a solopreneur, a real estate agent, a financial advisor, we all have the ability to think like an entrepreneur. So ask yourself, where do I want to go? How am I going to get there? And can I do it? What is my strategy to make this business a success? I want to thank you for joining me again on today's House of Bricks podcast. Little different style. And if I was coaching you, I wouldn't want you to spend hours and hours listening to podcasts either. So we've tried to make these very short, impactful. I coach people all the time. You can only process and implement so much information. So it's taking these little pieces of advice, putting them into action, and continuing to make progress. If this episode inspired you, please share it with other people. We're trying to build our community. We want like-minded people to be a part of the House of Bricks movement, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Hiring team members, scaling the business, the transition to a CEO. I'm going to unpack the entrepreneurial journey for you. Making decisions, it creates action. Hey everybody, I want to thank you for joining me again on this week's episode of the House of Bricks podcast. If you've been following us for a while, we've had some incredible guests on our show with amazing stories, challenges that they've overcome in life. But one thing I want to tell you is the situations that you're going through right now in your business, in your personal life, those situations are real to you. So maybe you haven't won a Super Bowl, maybe you didn't grow up homeless, but whatever situation you're going through, the things that we talk about on this show, they're very applicable to where you are in life. I don't want you to get discouraged on the journey because you never know what one closed door may lead to in terms of another door being open. So stay committed to following our show. If you haven't watched our other episodes, I want you to go back and watch them because they're truly inspiring. I'm getting text messages almost every day